It provided undeniable evidence for all my doubts. It was Hi, my name is Gianna from Miami. I would like to share the crazy tale of my relationship, so stay tuned. My husband, Chris, was supposed to be on a 3-day business trip in New Jersey, yet it seemed that I had just seen him on a live broadcast with another woman in his arms. Just as I was about to look into the TV to get a better view and understanding, the TV signal became weak. For 3 minutes, I tried to fix it. After no success with restoring the signal, I video called him. The phone rang for a long while before he finally answered. Chris's camera shook slightly, and his handsome face appeared. He greeted me warmly.
What's up, honey?
Where are you? I asked urgently as my eyes scanned the footage in his background. To me, it seemed like he was in the corridor of a restaurant, and he was in a suit, wearing a white shirt. However, the figure I saw in the live broadcast wore a gray windbreaker.
I'm having dinner with a client. What's up? Is there something wrong? Is Sabrina asleep?
He asked. Are you in New Jersey? I sidestepped his question and asked.
Of course I am. What are you talking about?
He looked at me seriously through the camera, full of curiosity. It's nothing. I mumbled absent-mindedly, then asked, when are you coming home?
Soon. I'll be back once I wrap things up here.
Chris smiled affectionately at me.
Go to bed early, okay? I still have things to attend to. Love you. I'll see you tomorrow.
He blew a kiss to me and then hung up the call. I held my phone, stunned and annoyed at myself for being suspicious. Chris was an extraordinary, handsome, and doting husband, even though he was just a pauper when we first met. After graduation from the University of Miami, I used my parents' house as collateral to start a supply company with him and stayed by his side. Fortunately, the company grew and began thriving. When I was expectant, I decided to entrust the company to my husband while I focused on raising our child and managing our home. Sabrina, our daughter, had turned 4. We led a comfortable and well-off life as a family of 3, which people were envious of. Chris felt so guilty that we didn't have a wedding ceremony that he promised to provide for me and make up for any grievances I suffered. How could such a husband betray me? Could he really do anything to hurt me? I pursed my mouth and smiled, realizing I had watched too many TV shows. Yes, being a stay-at-home mom, I get to watch a lot of television. However, there's nothing I enjoy more than clicking on and exploring relationship dilemmas playlist. They have the best relationship stories ever, and you should hit that subscribe button to not miss out on free entertainment. Anyway, when I laid back in bed, I still thought about the fleeting figure on the live broadcast. I must have been thinking about Chris too much. Also, the windbreaker looked familiar as it was the one I had ironed for him before his business trip. That means the man in the live stream wore a similar one, which confused me. Chris returned early the following day. He hugged me and Sabrina affectionately, creating a heartwarming atmosphere. I rushed to the kitchen happily to prepare several of his favorite dishes to welcome him home. After dinner, I quickly put Sabrina to bed and then showered. Before I laid my head to sleep, his phone on the bedside table flashed, indicating he had received a message. I glanced at it and froze. I was about to pick up the phone to see who the sender was, when Chris hurried into the room and took the phone. He glanced at it hastily, then looked back at me and said that it was Brie. What's the matter? Are you afraid that I'll find something? I looked at him suspiciously and felt uneasy as if something was wrong. The message had only 4 words. Did she find out? It was enough for me because it implied the other person feared I'd find out about something. Chris chuckled casually and threw the phone back on the bedside table. Then he pulled me into his arms and kissed my face, saying,
You're overthinking. It's my sister, Brie. She's using me as a cover to get some money from Mom.
Brie was Chris's younger sister. She had been weak and sickly since childhood, so her family always pampered and spoiled her. Brie was in her 20s, but never took anything seriously. She didn't even go to school and only partied and had fun. Get money from your mom? Where do you think her money comes from? I snapped. Chris smiled, bent down, and lifted me in his arms. Then he nibbled on my earlobe as he cuddled with me in bed.
I know. It's all your money. That's what happens when somebody marries an amazing and understanding woman like you.
I appreciated his words. Throughout the years, I had never been stingy regarding his family. In any way possible, I would lend a helping hand when it came to finances. The following day, just after dropping Sabrina off at kindergarten, I received a call from my best friend, Valentina. She said she wanted to meet at our usual spot. Of course, I immediately responded and took a cab to the location. Valentina and I were close, just like sisters. We could talk about anything, but it was rare for her to call me. After all, she was a busy woman who worked as a talent manager in a media company. When I entered our favorite Starbucks shop, I saw her sitting in the corner, typing away on her laptop. She waved at me as I approached, and I sat down before playfully asking, "Why are you so free today? You even had time to ask me out so early in the morning." Valentina rolled her eyes at me and replied,
"Can I be concerned about you?"
"Sure you can." I sat down and sipped the coffee she had ordered for me. "But aren't you always busy while I'm always free?"
Ha! Aren't you ashamed of that? Now all I see is Chris spoiling you. Don't say I didn't warn you, but don't get too comfortable. It's easy to become a fool.
Valentina said, looking at me intently. For some reason, her words made my heart pound. I looked at her and casually asked, "What do you mean? There's more to your words, isn't there?" She lowered her gaze, looking at the computer screen, seemingly trying to hide something.
Oh, nothing. I'm just teasing you a little.
After some thought, she looked at me and said,
I saw Chris the day before yesterday.
2 days ago? Where? I asked, feeling a little anxious. Valentina noticed my reaction and retorted,
What's with that look?
"Where did you see him?" I couldn't care less about bantering with her and continued pressing for answers. However, Valentina's phone started ringing. She glanced at the screen and hushed me before answering the call. After a few sentences, she straightened up, glanced at me, and said,
What? I'll be right there.
Immediately after, she closed her laptop and stuffed it into her bag.
I have to go. Let's meet up another time.
"Wait, can you please explain what happened?" I had more questions for her, but she ignored me and left. She said she saw Chris 2 days ago, but he was supposed to be in New Jersey then. Where did she see him? I shrunk back into the seat silently. I was helpless, but a strange sense of fear filled my heart. The video kept playing in my mind, but I wasn't sure if it was Chris. Was he lying to me? I headed home and sat alone with my mind in turmoil. Despite the warm sunlight shining on me, I couldn't stop shivering. I wondered what I would have to do if Chris had an affair, and what would happen to Sabrina. I was so absent-minded the whole day that I forgot to pick Sabrina up. Fortunately, Chris returned early. He quickly comforted me and left for kindergarten. Once he left, I forced myself to get up and started cooking. Before Chris returned, Brie walked in unexpectedly. She had a key to our place and treated it as her own home. Although I disliked this, Chris indulged her. When she saw me in the kitchen, she put down her bag and came over. She leaned against the door and asked me about where Chris was. I was washing the veggies as I replied, "He went to pick Sabrina up."
It's already late and he's only going to pick her up now?
Brie's tone carried a hint of reproach. She always acted pampered and arrogant, as if she was the boss of the house. Just then, Sabrina's tender voice echoed from the doorway.
Mommy, I'm back. Why did you forget to pick me up today?
She ran up to me, looking at me with her head tilted. Although I felt guilty, I smiled and pinched her nose. I was busy. I promise I won't forget my baby next time. Chris walked through the doorway and looked at us dotingly. Meanwhile, Brie approached the doorway and greeted him.
Chris.
Why are you here?
Chris asked as he entered the kitchen and wrapped his arms around me. The next second, he removed my apron and put it on himself.
I got this, honey. You can go play with Sabrina.
Brie stared at her brother and sarcastically remarked,
My brother is such a good husband. I want to find someone like him in the future.
Chris snapped,
Just leave the kitchen and wait for the meal.
I don't want to.
Brie spoke playfully, then squeezed into the kitchen.
I want to experience being supportive.
I sighed at her words and thought she was shameless. I knew she was only ingratiating herself with Chris to ask for money again. She was practically a parasite, yet unapologetic, and still dared to be carefree. I took my daughter's hand and left the kitchen. If Brie was out of sight, she was out of mind. Just then, my phone rang, and when I looked, it was a video call from Valentina. I hurried back to the bedroom and answered the call to complain. "You're something else, huh? You left me hanging."
Something came up at work.
Valentina sounded tired. I couldn't hold back and asked her, you mentioned seeing Chris 2 days ago. Where was he?" This question had been bugging me all day. Valentina paused before she answered calmly.
Honestly, I forgot the exact location. It was just a fleeting glimpse while I was driving.
Oh, for some reason, her answer left me a bit disappointed. Although my heart dropped, I unclenched my fists and realized my palms were cold and sweaty.
I know how obsessed you are with your husband, but can't you prioritize yourself more? You seem completely disconnected from the outside world because of him. Will you even count the money for him if he betrays you for money?
Valentina mocked me. "Chris will never do that to me," I retorted.
Yeah, he will never do that, but I will.
Valentina sneered.
The truth hurts sometimes, but you must have values. Now you're just being a fool.
Valentina babbled, and I had no time to refute. She noticed my silence and softened her tone.
Gianna, you used to be a top student, my superstar. I just think it's a pity to see you wasting your time at home like this.
Enough. This is like giving me a pat on the back after humiliating me. We both laughed when I said that. Still, I knew Valentina always spoke her mind. Although she had mentioned similar things before, hearing them again today felt different. I couldn't help but wondered if Valentina was trying to imply something. Just then, Chris walked in with a gentle smile and told me that dinner was ready. Valentina heard his voice and said,
All right, go have your dinner.
Then she lowered her voice.
Take my words to heart.
With that, she hung up. Chris pulled me into his arms and kissed me.
Who was that?
Valentina.
What did she say? Was she nagging again?
Chris smiled tenderly. He knew how close Valentina and I were because the three of us were former classmates.
I haven't seen her in a long while.
My mind began to spin. Chris said he hadn't seen her in a while, so Valentina was far away when she saw him. I felt relieved and knew I was overthinking. Chris noticed my absent-mindedness and leaned down to look at me. He asked me whether everything was all right. I looked at him and told him that I was fine and that we should go have dinner. Chris pulled me close and kissed me again before we walked outside. Even so, my doubts somehow grew heavier. Brie didn't stay long after dinner. She pouted at Chris and asked him whether he could give her a ride. I rolled my eyes at her and glanced her way, but she feigned ignorance as she clung to Chris's hug. Chris looked at me helplessly. I was honestly sick of Brie, so I waved her away. I told Chris to take her where she wanted to go and said that I would take care of the dishes. He promised to come back early, then he left to drop Brie off. Brie held onto her brother's arm, glancing back at me with a mysterious smile, but I couldn't be bothered. Chris returned late that night, but I didn't ask much. Since he was a dutiful son, I assumed he chatted with his parents before coming home. He woke up early the following day, took Sabrina with him, and dropped her off at kindergarten to save me the trouble. Chris was always so considerate, leaving me nothing to complain about. I tidied up the clothes he had changed out of and checked the pockets before washing them. I didn't expect to find something. Still, I decided to do it anyway. My gut just pushed me to do it. As I dipped my hand into the pocket, I felt something as if it was in a sachet. I pulled it out, and I was shocked and horrified by what I held. It provided undeniable evidence for all my doubts. It was protection.
Whoa, now that was crazy. I thought my ex was crazy, but this is just crazy on a whole different level. And that was just part 1. You guys better subscribe, cause you know it only gets juicier from here. Turn on the notification bell too. and like this video to support the channel. Thanks for watching.